For Ghana, yes, Bukarama!
When Ghana's Audit Service released its reports on the 2023 African Games, one verdict stood out. The state broadcaster, Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, had many questions to answer. Contracts executed without paperwork, broadcasting rights was handed to a major international channel for free. GBC staff did jobs that were outsourced to private companies. But document obtained by the Fourth Estate tells a different story. GBC says the evidence is submitted was not captured in the Auditor-General's report. It starts with three companies: the Production Room, Silicon House, and Broadstem. The Auditor-General said GBC engaged all three without written contracts, despite the funds involved. The Production Room was paid 57,030 euros for training the GBC crew for the games, laptops, and editing software. Silicon House, $165,000 for outside broadcasting vans, and Broadstem, $65,000 for satellite services. But GBC insists it had contract for all three and handed them over days after the query letter demanded responses from its Director General. The Fourth Estate confirmed that two of the contracts were signed on February 22, 2024, and another on March 15, 2024.
This is an agreement. And this agreement with the Production Room was presented to the auditors. They have signed here 6th February 2026 to have received this copy of the contract with the Production Room. You can peruse it yourself. I will give you a copy. The contract we have. And we gave it to Madame Jemima Arthur, who was the lead auditor, and she received it. She went ahead to publish that there was no contract. I don't understand.
The audit also claimed that one company, the Production Room, was paid in full upfront, contrary to best practices in financial management. Payment records reviewed by the Fourth Estate, however, says something different. The first payment went out 1 day before the games ended. The biggest payments came nearly a year later.
So you are not telling me that I paid the money upfront, and I'm telling you that even the majority portion, the largest portion of the money was paid almost 1 year after the games. Who is telling the truth? And let me tell you this, the auditors never requested for this statement. No, they didn't look. They did evidence of payment, they didn't look. Go and ask them.
What about the disputed staff training and equipment? The Fourth Estate confirmed that the training did happen, but it was not in person. It happened online.
It was online for, if my memory serves me right, for the 3-week period.
Two members of staff of GBC, named as training participants, however, told the Fourth Estate that they were never part of the training. 8 Dell laptops were traced through a GBC store voucher. 3 were found in the state broadcasters' editing and digital units. The rest were said to be with journalists who were not in at the time the Fourth Estate visited GBC. Now, the biggest number in the story, GBC spent about $3.6 million producing the games, but only made $45,000 from broadcast rights, paid by just 2 national broadcasters in Botswana and Congo. Everyone else, including SuperSport on DSTV, got the feed for free. A WhatsApp message thread obtained by the Fourth Estate shows SuperSport indicating that they will consider airing the games if it were free. GBC's acting marketing manager forwarded the message to the local organizing committee chairman, who replied, "Yes, let's do it." The audit service says the country lost 59.4 million cedis because of GBC's failure to sell the broadcasting rights.
The local organizing committee instructed GBC to give them, which we did, and we provided the evidence in the report to the auditors. So GBC did not give it to multi-choice.
We reached out to Dr. Kweku Ovusu-Asari, the LOC chairman, but he declined to comment.
The audit also claims that GBC staff carried out work that contracted companies were supposed to do. resulting in a loss of 40 million Ghana cedis. GBC rejected that claim, saying staff were attached to production teams for learning purposes and not deployed as labor.
Let me explain to you. They came with their staff and they deployed. We said, you have very fancy, beautiful equipment. So we don't deploy even a single camera. So normally, if I am deploying staff, I deploy them with my equipment. I didn't deploy any equipment, please. GBC didn't even deploy one single camera to go and cover the games. Having said that, the people came with their own cameramen. They came with their own, in fact, they even took labor in town. They hired some people in town and they were paying them 1,000 cedis a day. That's casual, to help them work there. Now, we then said that, given the opportunity that we have these games here, can we allow our staff to embed in the system and see the equipment and use them? They say, yeah. So here is a case. GBC staff who took part in the games were there to learn the use of the equipment. And that is what we did. We never supplied labor.
Auditors also have issues with GBC's procurement approval process, which occurred months after the games ended. However, GBC says it was only formally brought in weeks before the opening ceremony, with key contract signed days before the game was opened.
We regret stepping up because the understanding with the ministry. In fact, one of the reasons why, and I'll tell you, one of the reasons why the PPA application delayed was that at the heat of the conversation, we got a verbal approval that, look, when we finish the game, we'll help you apply to the PPA. When we finish the games and we're talking to information, finance, sports, they were not interested in the conversation at all. It took me 3 months to know that they are not going to help. Then I said, GBC, we're going alone, and we have a good story to tell to explain the circumstances. And PPA took another 4 months or so to issue the report, to issue a decision.
The auditors also claimed that GBC staff were shortchanged in the payment of their per diem during the games.
As contained in the collective agreement and other public documents, officially, when you are deployed within the same city, you are not qualified for any financial benefits. So when we deployed them for they said they were there to go and embed and learn. And they were ready to go and learn and pick up some ideas. We started to say that we'll give a staff 50 Ghana because we were told that food will be supplied. But later when we found out that food wasn't supplied, we increased it 100 cedis a day per person. They said they wanted 500 cedis a day. And I told them that not even the CEO is entitled to that money for working. If I go out to Lagos Sports Studio and work, and even with my board for the whole day, we cannot be entitled to. We are entitled to zero.
Audits are supposed to end with an exit meeting between auditors and management to settle on outstanding issues. What was discussed in that meeting between the auditors and GBC's management?
I want to say that up till now, I have written to the Auditor-General requesting for a meeting. They have not responded.
With the Director General of GBC discrediting the audit report, we wrote to the Auditor General seeking clarification on allegations contained in the audit report and GBC's allegations. Well, the audit service turned us down.
What began as a forensic audit into spending on the 2023 African Games has now become a battle over evidence and credibility. On one side, the Auditor General's report. On the other side, documents GBC says were ignored.
What is worrying is that the Auditor General published my responses without the attachments. The contracts I gave and a reference in the submission, they publish it, but they extracted the attachments, which would have shown to the reader that, but you say there's no contract, but it's a contract. What were they seeking to achieve by excising the contracts and publishing it? There's something worrying about it. It borders on ethics. It strongly borders on ethics. I will leave it there for the listener, the viewer, the reader to judge. That my response that these are the contracts you say they don't exist, you will not publish it. And you have it. Because what they published is the first, is these observations which make reference to the attachments which are all here. And they refuse to publish that one. And they held back the contracts as evidence so that their claim will stand. I beg to differ. That is not an audit report. And I challenge the Auditor-General that this type of auditing, please, we can do better as a country so that we'll continue to respect the office of the Auditor-General. It's an office we respect highly, and it should be able to stand as a very noble office where public office holders will be ready to face, provide evidence, and be sure that the evidence they provide will count. Unfortunately, this time around, the evidence I provided did not inform the judgment or the conclusions of the Auditor-General. I am highly, highly disappointed.
The final verdict may now rest with Parliament's Public Account Committee and its determination of which side or version of the two stories is the truth.